Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm blessed and highly favored. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
So, Sergeant Schroeder, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from?
Sure. Sergeant John Schroeder with the Garland County Sheriff's Department. Started with the department approximately 10 years ago as a reserve officer. I did that for 4 years in a voluntary capacity and then came on to my true calling. Stopped chasing the almighty dollar and became a full-time law enforcement officer. So since then I've gone from detention to patrol and to the training division now, where I currently head up all the training for enforcement and detention.
So you have a pretty good rounded out idea of law enforcement in a lot of different perspectives, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So you know what we're here for today?
I believe you're going to ask me about our crisis intervention training.
Yeah, so I was a little curious before we started talking about it, what you knew about that program.
You know, I really didn't know much. I thought it was like going to be some sort of a negotiation type of a tactic, like a crisis negotiation team or something, and it certainly is not that. It's completely different than what I thought.
So what changed as far as before you knew what it was and then after? What are the changes in your perspective?
So for me, it was changes in education for law enforcement to be able to spot someone with a mental illness or that may have a potential mental illness when we're out on a call with, say, an emotionally disturbed person. Someone who in the past I may have thought was just acting up and maybe just need to go to jail. Now I can recognize some signs and symptoms, or maybe I can divert them to a mental health crisis unit, somewhere they can get help without having to be in the criminal justice system.
So do you think that that's something that's useful for you in your everyday or in an officer's everyday role?
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt that it's useful. I've used it several times since I've had the training, and frankly, I've used it on my children because it allows us to mirror. So if I need you to react in a way that I want you to react, if I will get myself in that frame of mind, is what they taught, then that person will generally always mirror that back to you. It may take a little time, but it actually works.
Can you give me an example of how you used it on your children?
Sure, absolutely. So let's say my 10-year-old is just way up here. You know, he's mad, he's upset. Instead of me trying to get above him and get madder or louder, I just calm down and start talking to him in a nice, even tone and mirror for him what I want him to do. And he almost always will come down to that level and realize that, hey, while Dad's serious, he's not so upset that he's going to yell and scream at you, and it seems to get through to him a whole lot better.
Do you think that he notices a change in you using that skill?
I don't know that he does on a conscious level, but I think he does in the fact now that he opens up more to me than he used to, which is good. And that same thing will happen out on the street with deputies who deal with the same people over and over, because they'll realize, hey, this deputy is not going to yell and scream at me. They actually understand me. They always talk to me in a nice, respectful way. And that goes a long way with the public and a long way with my kids.
So you found that this skill was not just useful for your actual, professional role, but also personal role. And on the other end, for the community side, what do you think that the benefits they would see would be?
I think they're going to see less officer-involved problems as far as, batteries and fights with police officers and things of that nature. Because an emotionally disturbed person a lot of times will react in a way that's physical. And so if the officer's not trained properly, he's going to take that as a threat, or she's going to take that as a threat, and we may become involved in an altercation. I think what you're going to see is a decrease in physical altercations and an increase in officer safety, and therefore an increase in citizen safety as well. Because we have no desire to get in a fight with anybody, and if we can understand on a communication level that we can talk to people in a way that can bring them down, then we can get people help they need without placing them in handcuffs or without physically having to fight them. And I think that's going to be your overall, one of your large overall benefits from this, is that we'll have theoretically less officer-involved assaults or fights.
Which is the goal in the end in your everyday, even
Absolutely.
Before the CIT, right?
Absolutely. Number one thing you can do in this job is talk people into handcuffs, or talk people into the car, or talk people into help, because your real weapon is your mind. Best thing my FTO ever taught me, he said, John, you can come to work every day and you can get in a fight as a police officer and you can justify it because you're the police and they have to follow your orders. Or you can treat everyone with respect and you'll talk most people into handcuffs or talk most people into the help you need. And I've found that to be absolutely true, and CIT just reinforces that.
So after you went through the training, what were your thoughts about the actual program itself? Not just the skill that you're getting, but it's 40 hours. That's a lot to ask of any person,
Sure it is.
especially someone in your kind of role, and when we really want you on the street doing those things that are keeping us safe. So what were your thoughts about the actual program?
So for me, the biggest, most beneficial part of the program, well, I guess there were two. Number one was actually getting to go to a mental health unit and actually get to speak to people who have mental health problems, and they're legitimate. Being able to see their perspective on law enforcement helped me a lot to maybe mellow out towards them some. And then the role play is a huge deal. So yes, 40 hours is a sacrifice. It takes assets off the street, but I think in the long run it's a benefit. The role-playing part of that training is very crucial because we learn by repetition. So the more we do something, the better we get at it. And so doing the role play with the mental health professionals and with the other officers was by far the best part of that entire training because it allows us to take reps that I can now go out without even thinking about it, and I can perform the guardrails. I can talk to people the way I should. I can establish boundaries, and I can still show respect at the same time. And I don't even have to think. It's not like I got to flip back through notes or anything. Because we did it over and over, I can now go out right now and do it on the street without even thinking about it.
So you mentioned earlier that you're overtraining within your agency. So as someone who coordinates trainings, what were you thinking as far as the actual training itself and putting it together? And we've talked about it for our community, putting one together. I know it's a relatively intense process, but what are some points of recommendation or thoughts on for other communities that are looking at doing this? Is this something beneficial, first of all, for them? And what kind of guidance would you offer if they were trying to put one together?
Okay, so absolutely this is beneficial for any law enforcement agency, no matter how big or how small. This is based on the Memphis model. They've been using it there a long time, and it works really well. What I would suggest is if they're going to do this in their own agency, they need to send someone to the crisis intervention 40-hour training, and then they need to send someone to the train the trainer training, and probably more than one person. That would need to be probably the person that's over their training or someone that is intimately involved in their training. Our goal as a department, from the sheriff and undersheriff down, is that we would like to see all of our enforcement be trained in crisis intervention, and then to push it off into detention as well, where they can be trained in it. All this is going to do is make people well-rounded officers and allow them to deal with the public in a more respectful way. This just reinforces that we are servants. There may come a time where we need to arrest people, and that's fine. We will do that. We're not going to skirt the law just because someone's mentally ill. However, if we can divert them and we can have the proper training to do that, keeping them out of the criminal justice system, if possible, is the right step to take.
Well, and you mentioned detention center, and you said earlier that you have experience there. So how do you think this could be helpful within that setting?
We deal with a lot of emotionally disturbed people in the detention setting. We have nurses on hand 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But having the line deputies who are the housing unit supervisor, basically, they run their own housing unit, having them understand what this training is will help them to spot people that have needs, hopefully, before a problem arises. And they can direct them to the proper mental health people, direct them to the nurses, and maybe get them some help. Because we do deal with people who are on medications for mental illnesses in the jail on a daily basis. So having these officers know how to speak with these people would be immensely helpful to the detention staff and to the overall safety of the facility itself.
So I think that's essentially all the questions I had. What are some thoughts that you'd like to share with everyone about crisis intervention training or your experiences or kind of the things that you've gained, knowledge that you've gained from it? Is there anything that you'd like to add?
Sure. For me, crisis intervention training is about becoming a well-rounded officer, and it's about showing empathy for our community. There are lots and lots of people out there today that have emotional problems. That could be from stress, that could be from a true mental issue, that could be from depression. It could be any number of outside factors that are giving them problems. Our goal as an officer, when we show up on your scene, is for what you're going through to be the most important thing we're dealing with right then. This training really helps officers focus on that and focus on the person. If we can get on that person's level while maintaining officer safety, which is what this teaches, then we can have better outcomes more times than not. And that's what we're looking for, because we have no desire to have fights with the public. We have no desire to arrest everybody we see. Our real job is to help people. And for me, I have found that this just makes me a better, more well-rounded officer. And I always tell the guys and gals that I train, everybody wants to go do the cool guy stuff, right? Everybody wants to go do SWAT stuff or go do shooting or whatever, and the neat stuff. People usually don't want to do the stuff that really matters, and that's communication, that's report writing, that's crisis intervention training, right? That is all those things that make you a well-rounded individual that allows you to speak with people not as some authoritarian person, while you do have authority that's vested in you as an officer, but as a person who just happens to wear a badge who's there to help them. That's what I want the community to see, is that we care about them more than we care about our authority. Now, we use our authority if we need to, but our goal is to get people to safety and to get them to help in whatever manner that is. If I've got to use the criminal justice system to get them that help, well, we'll go that route. But if I can divert them prior to and get them help they need without putting them in the system, that helps them, that helps their family, that decreases their costs. And in the long run, getting them the proper help should keep them out of the criminal justice system. And that'll be our goal.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.